Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I am going to call the meeting to order at 8:15. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Housing Opportunity Partnership Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting or participate may do so in the following manner: www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, we're done. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I would like to start the meeting off, again, moving the agenda. Sarah, we should probably put the minutes first because I always move the minutes up. I'd like to just approve the minutes from February 25th. Does anybody have any changes or questions?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Okay, we get a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion at all? Changes, nothing? Okay, this will be a roll call vote. Tom O'Coulier,
Yes.
Jesse?
Yep.
Alex?
I didn't get to read them, so I'll abstain.
Okay, Chelsea?
Yes.
Tom?
I wasn't here, but I'll vote yes if it counts.
Okay, John?
Yes.
And Dorian, yes. Okay, minutes are approved. Okay, Affordable Housing Trust Fund 5-year, or not fund, but Affordable Housing Trust, the 5-year strategic plan update. Sarah, could you just update us as to what's going on with the MAPC and Karina?
Sure. So, with the input of everyone from the last meeting, I sent that draft over to Karina right away. I didn't hear back from her, so I did send her a kind of a follow-up email, and she indicated that she was really busy, but she would get back to me either today or tomorrow. So unfortunately, I don't have those updates for this meeting, but she is going to give some feedback. So we do have kind of like a timeline kind of convergence here. So the next CHOPSI meeting is going to be Friday, the 26th. However, the application does need to be in by the 19th, or they're encouraging applications to be in by the 19th. It is a, kind of a rolling submission process. But obviously, people who kind of submit first kind of get first, first priority. So was hoping that I could work with Karina and Dorian to kind of finalize that submission and then bring it back to the board for discussion on the 26th, just kind of showing what was submitted. I don't think that it'll be substantially different than the draft that we, all discussed. So just wanted to kind of put that out to the group.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
My only questions related to the trust meeting that we probably need to have in order to approve the grant funding piece.
Mm-hmm.
So is your intent to have the trust approve the application, Sarah? I just want to make sure that we get the timing down right. Because we
Sure.
have to schedule the trust meeting. I was
Sure.
hoping for the end of this week, beginning of next, to give you enough.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that would definitely give enough time. Obviously with that, donation, if we are contribution if we are, awarded the grant. I would obviously want that approved before we submitted our application. So, there is a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing. Again, if we submit, a few days, kind of around the deadline, that's okay. But I guess the question for this board is, is there confidence in, Dorian and I, and obviously working with Karina, submitting that before this full board convenes again. And obviously the trust would have to sign off on the monetary piece.
Yeah, I talked to Lisa, the Affordable Housing Trust. She was hoping that they would meet by the end of this week or early next week. So it would probably be within a week's time. We also don't have an update on the Stockwell Lane house that they also are going to discuss at their next meeting. So we're kind of in a waiting pattern a little bit on them, but I'm hopeful that, if we're going to get a grant for $10,000 to $16,000, that making a donation of $2,500 will not be seen negatively by that group. So we are in a holding pattern, but we do need to, we have a deadline of March 19th, Sarah, for that grant.
Yes, next
So
Friday.
what I would like to do is ask this board to vote to approve Sarah and myself and Karina, making sure that application is acceptable and to send it so we can get it out by the deadline. So I'd like you guys to vote to give us the authority to go ahead on our behalf, the Shopsy's behalf, to get that in.
I make a motion to allow Dorian, Sarah, and Karina to facilitate the grant moving forward.
I'll second it. I beat you.
Okay, all those in favor, it's a roll call vote. Tom Marcoulier,
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes.
Alex? You're muted, Alex. I have to hear you, sorry.
Aye.
Chelsea,
Aye.
Tom,
Yes, aye.
John,
Aye.
and Dorian, I'm going to abstain since it's to give me permission. Okay, so we should be
Hey,
good
Dorian,
on that.
Really quickly, I just voted for it, but what is it? What did we just vote for? I missed the last meeting. Just in 5 seconds, what is our project?
We're applying for a grant. So instead of us paying for the 5-year strategic plan on our HPP, we're applying for a grant, and that grant is for an amount of between $10,000 and $16,000 by the MAPC.
For our next HPP in like 3
No,
years?
no, for a 5-year strategic plan to implement. our
Gotcha.
HPP.
The strategic plan we've been talking about. Okay,
Right, so-
gotcha. So I see.
Sarah found a grant that if we get awarded that grant, it would pay for that instead of
I
us
see.
paying for it.
Gotcha.
And it's customary to make a donation. So that's where that $2,500 is coming from. It would come from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund,
I see.
which we obviously have money in. So that's what this whole discussion.
All right,
is.
thanks. Sorry to bug you down. It's
No.
probably get caught up.
And you need to understand that because questions may come up, but that's essentially what this is. So
Okay.
thank you, everybody. Sarah, we need to get on that. I don't
Sure.
want to miss that deadline.
Sure.
That's critical. And then if you wouldn't mind, once the application is in, could we send a copy to everyone on this board so they see what was submitted?
Absolutely.
And then we can discuss that at the next
Sure.
meeting, but I would like everybody on this board to have a copy of that application.
Of course.
Okay, perfect.
Sounds good.
Okay, all right, deadline, voting. Sorry, I had to make a little punch list here so I don't forget. Okay, we did that. I have emailed CPC, Andrew Mills, inquiring about the transfer of the $196,276.62. It has been sitting with the CPC. It was voted on at 3 different town meetings. In 2009, $90,000 was approved to go to the Affordable Housing Trust. 70,000 was approved in 2011. And in 2012, 36,276.62. That's where that odd number came from, was approved. That money has been sitting in a bucket with CPC, and we need to have that money transferred to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So I am still waiting to hear from CPC as to what the procedure is to get that money transferred immediately. So that's where that is, because that was one of my things to do. Okay, anybody have any other questions on the strategic plan grant or anything regarding that? Okay, all right, John. You have a limited time, so would you like to discuss
Sure. So I
growth?
I apologize. I don't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead. We're good.
So I asked Dorian to put the one-stop grant process on the agenda to see if there's anything that this committee would like to submit, because you have to have a letter of intent to the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator by April 2nd. So she sent off, I believe that you all saw the draft presentation. That's what the EDC is putting to them for our
John,
stuff.
did you want me to share that or?
Sure, if you
It's
don't
up
mind.
to you. Totally up to you.
Yeah, I think it might be a little easier.
Oh, then
But
I can't
in
see
a
all the
nutshell,
faces.
in a nutshell, so what you could, in a nutshell, any of the town committees or even I think some private businesses can put in your top 3 things that you'd like to try to get a grant for, or what you'd like to accomplish with your projects to the town. You submit your intent to the administrator / Board of Selectmen, and then they put it in as a one whole narrative and letter of intent, and that's due by I think the middle of May, end of June. I think I have it in my. Sarah, can you just go down to the schedule for me? I think it's that one right there. So yeah, so from May 3rd to June 2nd is when the actual submittal, the full application needs to be in. So you have to have your narrative of what you want to do. So the EDC, our goal was to, our main focus was Route 9 and trying to get more business in and figure out infrastructure, blah, 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 as well as we wanted to see, because the footprint of office buildings is going to change at post-pandemic pretty substantially, potentially by like 40%. So we were looking into can some of these things be mixed use? Can some of these buildings along like the CAS building we've talked about and different buildings turn into housing? So so we put in for that as one of our priorities to find alternate ways for housing as well as the business on Route 9, blah, blah, blah. So my question was to you guys, is there any specific projects that you may want to put in? Because we have to have our letter of intent from this committee by April 2nd, which is pretty quick. It's right around the corner. You don't have to have anything huge like Marika did for us, but you just have to have your priorities of what you'd like, what you might want to do. I hate giving up. I won't call it free money because it's out of all of our taxes, but I hate giving up money that we have the opportunity to get that doesn't cost us any additional money. So,
John, can I ask Jesse a question?
Please.
Jesse, I'm not sure if this is more of a zoning question than planning. Can we convert an office building on Route 9 into affordable housing? No, I'm not talking about one that's right on the road, because obviously that's not a great idea, but I'm just wondering if we can convert that into apartments, or do we have to get a special permit, or how would that work if we wanted to do that? Because that's zone business, correct?
Well, it is by special permit because it's a use change. But I believe so. And certainly under, 40B, that 40B, that's the whole purpose of the statute, is to circumvent zoning. So if not by special permit from planning, you could just do it through the ZBA.
And didn't we talk about, Jesse, a little bit about the smart growth or whatever? Remember we had talked about the two sides of Parkerville that met the
Yep.
criteria to be part of smart, which is where the two main spots of vacancies are, Dorian, because you got the Andrea on one side. So there's opportunities too. It's just making sure that. Sorry.
So we could
Right.
potentially turn one of those office buildings, those big office buildings, into apartments, making part of them affordable. Obviously, it wouldn't all be affordable because we wouldn't
So-
get a contractor in there to do that, but
So John, had anybody approached the owner of that lot?
We haven't heard back from him as of yet. So yes, but still trying to get through. So, you're assuming that these office buildings too that they'd even want the larger ones, whether they'd want to sell or turn it into housing. And then if they own one of those buildings, the chance of them wanting to turn it, when they get, these are all A-space buildings along Route 9, that they'd want to probably turn that into affordable is slim. But we do have some underutilized buildings like the CAS. We have some underutilized lots. And then there's some smaller buildings that may, not that they have expressed any interest in setting anything yet, but like smaller buildings, like I'm just going to use the Trask building down Route 9 just for an example, or where the Clark School was, that, maybe if they continue their vacancies, they may want to do a mixed use, have offices downstairs, apartments upstairs, even rental units. And if you make, you get 25% of an apartment, it goes towards your census. So it's just things like that. Again, I just wanted to pose it to the committee to see if there's anything that you guys may want to try to get grant money for while it's available for the whole town to put in. And, we only have a couple of weeks left.
John, I don't know if you were just talking about this building. I know in the past, we've been talking about that South Union School building. I mean, that's a town building that they're looking for a reuse for. And I know we've talked about it, and that's not a property that anyone would need to buy. Is that still on our radar screen as something that we would be interested in facilitating?
It would be on my radar.
So I can speak to that. The Board of Selectmen took a position last week to put it out to RFP to see what kind of bids come in on that, Tom. And so I think there's more to come on that conversation, but I wouldn't say it's off the table yet.
I mean, but for our purposes, I mean, if we wanted to take an initiative on that, because Jason came before us and said, hey, you're a stakeholder. If you guys have an interest, raise your hand and raise your stake. So, I mean, do we need to do anything proactive in terms of pushing an agenda to try to turn that into housing and with an affordability component, or do we just sit back and decide what the Board of Selectmen decides to do with it?
Well, we could write a letter to the Affordable Housing Trust, I believe, being a suggestion they evaluate, appropriating the funds to make the conversion. I think that's the Shopsy's, mission, if you will, is to advocate for just this type of thing.
Yeah, I guess there's a difference between saying, hey, we'd like this to be affordable housing and let us know what you do. And, do we do something more proactive, like go to them and say, hey, we think that the best use of this would be housing, and a 40R would, for instance, would be a good, approach to this building to give a developer an economic incentive to buy this building, convert it to housing, and have a small percentage of it to be affordable, and the town gets benefits from that. But they're not going to do that on their own. I mean, if somebody's going to do it,
we've had several conversations about that parcel in the last 6 months, Tom, and we don't want what happened with Fayville to happen again. And so essentially what happened with Fayville is there were so many restrictions on it that it devalued what we sold it for. So we made the decision to let's just see what the options are and then have the voters decide if that's what they want or not what they want. And so that's kind of the approach that we're taking. So we're trying not to limit what we could get for that asset. If if we decide that that's not what we think we should get for it, then I think that there's other conversations that are happening with, that will happen subsequently after that. So I think the board's taking the position, let's just see what we could get and go from there. And that's why I'm saying that it's not completely off the table, because there's been no decisions made. We're just kind of exploring
Right.
what the options could be. I think the other thing with that building is we would need to actually figure out how much capital is needed in that building upcoming. There's an elevator in that building. So there's a lot of considerations. I think if you go back and listen to the presentation we had from Habitat last week or 2 weeks ago, and they talked about the cost to renovating a building, especially an older building, is sometimes not cheaper than building a new one. And there's also a historical facade component, because that South Union School is on the registry of
Historical places. Right.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different components to that property. So essentially where we're at right now is we're drafting the RFP. We'll be discussing it next Tuesday's meeting.
Gotcha. So just 2 cents on that. So that makes a lot of sense from the Board of Selectmen's perspective and the Planning Board's perspective. We have an asset here. We'd like to get a high rate of return. Let's see what the options are. And, developers come back and say, hey, we'd love to, buy this property and convert it to housing and have an affordability component. That'd be great. Shopsy would be happy with that too.
Yeah.
But the reality is that will never happen. If they put it out to RFP, no developer is going to come and say, yep, I want to develop this for housing and I will have an affordability component. No developer will do that. So that will never happen unless there's already, a structure in place to incentivize them to do that, like a 40R, whatever it's going to be. So, no developer is ever going to do affordable housing on their own without an economic incentive to do that. So I think from Shopsy's standpoint, when you have your Shopsy hat on, that approach, if we as Shopsy think that that's an asset that could be converted to housing with an affordability component, if just saying let's put it out to RFP and see what happens, we'll never get affordable housing in that building.
Chelsea, how much land is attached to that lot?
I believe it's 3 acres.
Yeah, it's a good chunk of land.
So,
And it bumps up to Solve. If you look at a map, there's a Solve portion on the backside. So it's not that whole space, because there's that Solve portion.
so I'm just trying to think, if a developer came in, could that lot be subdivided and they would be able to do something and make a huge profit on this and then do the affordable housing piece in the actual school itself? Is that something that's possible, or?
Potentially.
Okay.
I think what we're saying is, what Chelsea was saying is there's a lot of options. We're waiting for what a builder will come back with, and they could do what they want. Think it as a big project and cut it up in small pieces, but give us a holistic view. But I know John has a hard stop at 9. So grant money, I like grant money. Like I said, it's free money. I consider free money there for the taking. So one thought I had, and John was mentioning Route 9. So if we can get a grant money and bring it to somebody that can give us like John was saying, convert some of the old buildings there into housing and stuff like that, a whole holistic possibility of Route 9. I'm saying possibility because, it could do this, but we have obstructions. And so they identify this stuff. They identify creative ways to do Route 9, thinking outside the box. I'm saying, we're not going to implement all these things or maybe none of them, but at least it gets people thinking of what's the potential for Route 9 if we think outside the box and we have another company saying we could do this, here's some obstacles, this is what can happen. And that way there, people will probably think about that section a little bit different.
You don't have to limit yourself to Route 9 as well. That was just EDC's.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I don't want this committee thinking that you have to limit yourself to Route 9. It's not. It's townwide. So it's a grant to do whatever we want. I mean, I like what you're saying, Tom, and I agree. So that's kind of what we're already trying to put in. Because some of these grants that are out there is you get a consultant instead of a monetary amount. You get a consultant that'll do this. And then again, once you tell them what you want to do, they bounce you out to all these different grants and places and information. It's actually a really great thing. So I apologize for interrupting you, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knows you don't have to limit it to.
It's fine. I think different parts of town has been already looked at so many times, but I don't think, like I said, it would be great if someone could think outside the box, what they can do with Route 9 with our current restrictions and listing the obstacles to do different things. And that way we're looking outside the box. Like you said, you mentioned the CAS building. You know what? Let's have someone actually really look into that. Give it a ballpark budgetary thing to convert into housing and stuff like that. And is there any obstacles around that stuff? That way we have something to present to a developer or something else. We have a holistic view of that section of town. I think it's just been ignored too much. And yes, we could do other parts of towns, but I think we should limit it. I don't want to boil the ocean. I think if we take a look at that, some creative grant that we can look outside the box and what can we do if we have a magic wand, it would be really good to do. And the benefits, the pros and cons of everything and come back to us. And again, all of that stuff is including, some kind of housing. I'm not developing this to be shops. I want to say, what can we do with the current zoning bylaws, et cetera, on these properties? And what can we do if we eliminate some of those obstacles on that section of town?
So some of the problems with Route 9 for housing is infrastructure as well. I met with the Capital Committee last night, and they are interested in wastewater aspect of this, of tying into septic somewhere or another and water somewhere or another as that, because some of the limitations for some of these buildings, just so you know, is the septic. It's right now they have these treatment plants or these septic systems that are designed for an office building use, not the amount of people that would be living there all the time. Some of the other issues on Route 9 are the septic is you can't really get a life science company to come in because of the lab, because they can't dispose of some of their stuff into the septic that they could if they had a sewage system. So
totally agree. I think,
but what I'm saying is what's nice is we have another committee that they're looking into Route 9 as well at that part of the wastewater aspect of it, some of the challenges. So anyway, sorry.
So
no, I totally agree on all that stuff. And that's why, we talk about these things and it's like, give us some concrete numbers around it. Is it even possible? No. Is it possible to do this? Yes. Is it possible to do smaller this and bigger that? Yes. So I just thinking if we had a grant and we have this great company that thinks outside the box of Route 9, I think that'd be kind of valuable to see the potential, and then we can go after certain things. I'm just saying, it's not our money.
Hard part is
If we don't spend it, someone else is going to spend it.
hard part is we don't own the land.
Are you suggesting hiring a consultant with the grant money, Tom?
Yep.
So you can take a look at Route
Like an
9?
exploratory.
And again, I keep on saying outside the box. I want to look outside the box.
So like a feasibility study of what could
Futuristic
turn into
stuff, I
housing and what couldn't.
Yeah, what is other creative people doing in the other part of the country, maybe in a different part of the world, that they can bring into this, saying it's very creative. They actually succeeded in doing something like this. Because like I said, Route 9, it hasn't been touched in how long? It's just a slow death road, it seems.
Well, the Andrea looks beautiful.
So I
mean,
I agree that we should look for grant opportunities for exploring Route 9, but I would also add with the new bill potentially coming around train stations, that we include that section as part of the grant application, because I think would just benefit the town in general to look for affordable housing near the train station. That's kind of where the legislature is going. So I think if we could, narrow it down to those two areas, and I think if we don't ask, we're not going to get it. So we might as well. I mean, this is a great opportunity for us to put something, include something for
And
shops.
Alex?
Hi, that actually brings to my concern. I'll show my ignorance, but does the bus still run down Route 9? Because it seems to me that transportation is a big factor for public housing.
Route 7, I mean, it's Route 7, right?
So it's
Yeah.
still
It
there.
still goes downtown. The bus still goes downtown.
But
Yeah.
it does, it's limited to where it goes. That's also, that's one of the things that EDC had put into theirs was more public transportation, Alex. So just so everybody knows, the town, so we put in our top 3, the town can put 5 of its priorities in. So is the train station around that, like, is that considered the 40R, Tom? To turn like, I know Chelsea and I talked a little bit about 40Rs in that area and a piece of property that may or may not be available turning into 40. That area, a 40R is considered affordable, correct? Or can be kind of, the town gets something out of it. I know
it's a zoning overlay district, so it would be, and I would be in favor of us doing something along those lines. Like it's a zoning overlay district, so sometimes, it's project specific where somebody has, I don't know, 30 acres of land and they do a 40R just for that. They zone just that project area. But it's also area, I was advocating it for the downtown business district area because it's for downtown business districts as well. But to your question, John, yeah, it is one of the main components is that they're designed around transportation oriented development. And so it would basically be, creating a zone near and around the train station or any other transportation hubs. And within that zone, people who develop within that zone would be subject to the overlay zoning bylaws. And for our purposes, one of the components of that, and that's part of 40R, is that I think it's 20% of any housing units have to be affordable. So that would be a good thing for us if we did a 40R zoning overlay around that area.
How hard is that to do, Jesse, to create going through planning? Because that sounds
Jesse's
like a
never done
massive
it.
undertaking.
I don't think the town's ever done it. So.
Well, that's
through.
true. We have,
But it's just a zoning
certainly
district.
not
They
in my
have
tenure.
zoning districts, but so.
Well, we have, so we
'Cause it's an
have
overlay.
done, we have
Correct.
done 2 overlay districts since I've been on planning. One for solar and one for, to restrict medical marijuana to a couple of areas. So it's basically, just coming up with the district, drawing it with the town planner, getting it on the warrant, having the public hearings. So it has to go through town meeting. There has to be public hearings for it. So we wouldn't be doing this at this
Yeah, it'd be
point.
a
So this
year, right? It'd be a
upcoming
good
town
year at
meeting. So it'd
least,
have to
right.
be the 2022 spring
That's
town
the
meeting.
earliest, just because these things take. Now, when you do something like a 40R and put it in place in the overlay, Jesse, would it be design guidelines, setbacks, all that same kind of stuff as like the downtown bylaw, or is it more just an overlay easier? Excuse my ignorance. I don't understand the zoning laws and
Yep.
planning law, so
Oh,
It's
yes.
basically the same process that we just went through with.
So it's going to take longer than a year, folks. So
They can spend it in a year. I mean, the project to get there would take longer than a year, I think, to get the zoning done. But to get the grant money to hire the consultant to start working on it now, those funds would be spent this year. So I don't think that just because, it's probably a longer than a year process to ultimately end up with a 40R zoning in place would take longer than a year. I don't think that would preclude us from seeking grant money now.
So I'd be definitely in favor of developing a 40R overlay in the Southville Road area.
So again, use that grant to look at the whole parcel, see what can be the 40R and what can be developed.
So the grant, Tom, so just so you know, what they do is you just put a letter of intent on you of 3 things you're trying to do. That we have to just put a letter of intent. We have to come up with 3 priorities that this committee wants to do. Send the letter of intent by April 2nd. So we could say we want to make a 40R overlay on Southville Road. We want to look at blah, blah, blah on Route 9 out of the box, what we could do these things for. And then the town takes everything that's been submitted by all the committees and makes one narrative of what they think would be best for the town. And then what happens there is once it's submitted, the state sends it out to the different pockets of money and different grants and tells you which one that you have to apply for.
Yeah.
So that's how this works. So it's not as simple as, oh, once we get the grant money. No, we have to figure out our top 3 focuses that we want to do as a committee to submit as a letter of intent to the town and then put it in. So far what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, we'd like to make a 40R district on south side of town and possibly look outside of the box on on feasibility studies on land uses on Route 9 for housing.
So
Yes.
John, how long would all that take?
Which part?
To the part at which we hire the consultant, from now to best case scenario, from now getting the grant and getting the
Jack,
consultant.
can you go back to my schedule for me, please? I think it was on the second page. So if we have to send out our thing before our letter of intent to the Board of Selectmen by April 2nd, and then they have from May 3rd to June 2nd to submit the full application. So what I think we'd have to do is, give our letter thing, then we'll have our letter of intent, and then we'll have to kind of give a better narrative of what we're looking for. Maybe our next meeting, write
Yes,
it up.
in other words, right now, we just have to give them the big picture concept of what we'd
Right.
like to do, and then we refine that into May, June.
Right, and then
Yeah.
they get the notification of awards is like, I think from October, it's October to November, and then November to the end of December is when they start sending you to contracting. So we
Okay.
wouldn't be able to see anything probably till the end of the year, Jesse. And I'm being conservative on that.
Well, so, and then the consultant would take, I wonder how long. We didn't use a consultant for the overlay districts, I don't think. I'll have to check with Don on that.
I think
This
we
is a
would
little
need
bit more
consultant to
complicated
help
though
write
than
the
what we've
bylaw,
done
wouldn't we?
before. So I'm thinking it's high. I think that 2022 is a little bit tight,
Oh, I agree.
but certainly 2023. I don't know. I would rather not wait until 2023 town meeting, but
Well, it all depends on how fast the hearings and everything go and how contentious it is, as with anything. It doesn't sound like, I don't think it'll be recreating the wheel because these districts have been done. Maybe we could look at other ones. Is there any around that we know in surrounding towns, Tom, that have the 40Rs that we could, pretty much look at the language that they've used to get it through, and maybe the same design guidelines of similar towns as us? Would that help you think?
I do think that 40R is a little bit of an non-standard animal than a regular zoning bylaw where you zone something commercial or residential or industrial. 40R has some technical aspects. I would tend to think that we would want to hire a consultant to help write the bylaw and help develop that.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think we could do it on our own. And I think there are other examples, but I think it's the type of thing that we would want to help on.
Is that what COG could do, Sarah? COG could help us write that? Or
Yes.
Submit it?
Yep.
Okay.
So
So I'm hearing that, John,
Yes.
the entire town can submit how many ideas?
The entire town, so
Because it's an entire
I
town,
think
it's
the
not
town
committee
the
based.
town can submit up to 5, okay? So right now, the Route 9 Route 9, that can tie into EDC's narrative, so that would be 1. Route 9, the wastewater from the Capital Committee and EDC and us, that can all tie in as 1, because it's all kind of the same thing, and that gets sent out, you know what I mean? So what we need to do as a committee is say we come up with right now we've got 2. We've got the 40R in Southborough, Route 9. And then if we have one more, then we just got to prioritize it in order for the selectmen of what we'd like to see, A, B, and C. Our number 1 would be 40R Southborough. Number 2 would be Route 9. Do we have a third idea, or do we just have the 2 and then just say, like on this particular one, I'd want the 40R on Southborough as our top priority because EDC's already put in for Route 9. This can just go into that same narrative. I'll make sure of that. As well as Capital's putting in for Route 9. So Route 9, I think if 3 committees are saying to look at that, I think that's going to be one of the top for the town to put in on their grant. So then what's next? Maybe I'm hoping it's the 40R for Southville or other different affordable things. So that's what we need. What we really need to do today is just come up with our ideas and prioritize them to send off as a letter of intent to the selectmen.
Okay, so Shopsy would have to indicate that one of their priorities would be the zoning overlay to create a 40R district in the Southville Road area by the train, around the train station. Correct? Tom,
If-
is that's
Yeah,
what
I
you're
think so.
talking about?
That sounds good to me. That
Okay.
that would be one of my.
That would probably be our first priority. Now, could we discuss the South Union School and converting that into housing as a priority?
Well,
Didn't
so
we
one
want-
thing I was just thinking of is that if the South Union School is near Southville Road, I mean, that could even be within the scope of the 40R. So if we put a 40R in place, then any developer who developed housing in that South Union building would be subject to the 40R affordability requirements. And
Now
there-
we're putting restrictions on that. We're just
What's
putting
that?
restrictions on creativity for that piece of property. Like Chelsea said, we don't want to put too many on.
Well, no, it's a 40R zoning would apply to everything in there. So I mean, maybe that's a reason that the Board of Selectmen might be against us putting a 40R in, because that would put, some restrictions on what they can do with that South Union building. So I think this would be an incident where we have a different priority than the Board of Selectmen does. I think
Does.
board singular. Does.
But I think that's smart to include that building in the potential
The 40,
overlay from that
right.
distance. That could be the border of it. Because go from. Then we got to figure out how far down we want to go as well down Southville. Do we go as far
Oh.
as the Ashland line? I mean,
John,
that sounds
John.
like planning.
John, if I may, when I was looking into the grants that apply for the 40R, it was within a half a mile of the train station. And if you do a Google map from the train station to 21 Highland, it's 0.6 miles. So I don't know how they would calculate the half mile. And I don't know that South Union would actually fall into.
I don't think it'll fall into that with those parameters.
Let me ask you this though, because I thought that it doesn't have to be a train station. It just needs to be public transportation, which could be a bus stop.
That is true.
There has
But
been some
if
discussion.
if we increase the bus route for the WRTA, which I'd like to do, and we have bus stops along that, I think you just have to be a half mile from any source of public transportation. I may be wrong on that, but I thought that's.
So just to throw something else out there, based on the timeline we just discussed to actually implement a 40R, that will be concerning of the selectmen because of the capital needs that are needed for South Union sooner than when we would probably get a 40R. So
They're trying to liquidate. They want to liquidate South Union and get the funds for other purposes on a shorter term basis. Is that what you're saying, Chelsea? Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. So we may have just
mean-
missed the boat on the South Union, but that doesn't
No,
But-
we didn't miss
mean
the
that the
boat.
40R won't
No,
still be useful
no,
for
I
the
think-
area.
But listen, I think it's so the selectmen are looking at it in the entire town's best interest, right? So, but that doesn't mean that Shopsy has to completely agree with what the selectmen are deciding to do either. So I think you can go ahead and include it, saying this is what Shopsy's intent is. It just may mean that the Board of Selectmen don't include that as part of the letter of intent. But I think it's within Shopsy's purview to request it, I guess is my.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we do now, the immediate thing now is just to float the concept before the April 2nd deadline. We want a 40R zone created around Southville Road, period. And then in the next 6 weeks after that, we get into the granular details
Right.
of what that consists of. And that
Right.
process, we'll figure out whether South Union fits within the parameters or not.
Right. So, and just to clarify, the April 2nd deadline, I think, is when the town needs to send the entire letter of
Oh, so we
intent.
gotta get it earlier. Yeah,
Yeah, the sooner the better.
So,
right.
I mean,
So
my
do-
concern, if you change that to a 40R overlay in that area, how does that impact St. Matthew's Church? How does that impact Fitzgerald Store? How does that impact any of the homes that are in that that would fall within that area?
Just like any other overlay district, whatever's there stays there, and the
Okay.
property owners can do whatever they want with their properties. It just
Exactly.
gives, if developers come in the future and buy a piece of property or buy up 3 homes, then when they're developing that area, they'll be subject to the zoning that then applies under 40R. So, we have these discussions with the downtown village district. There are a bunch of people who own property within that village district. The new zoning won't affect, what they're doing, what they do. It's just that if they want to keep their properties as residential homes for the next 100 years, they can do that. It really just governs future development.
It does not have any impact on the value of their property? It's not going to
probably will make it more valuable because developers, will have possibly an economic incentive to go in there and buy their property and develop it. But all zoning always has some level of effect on people's properties.
Right. What I don't want to do is suggest that we do something with an overlay district for 40R, and now we have a massive, major impact on Stockwell Lane homeowners to where somebody can come in and buy, because that somehow fits into that area, and somebody could put some huge complex for apartments right next to those homes, and it really has a very bad impact on their homes and their quality of life, that I don't want to have any part of doing that. So I think we have to be very specific with what we're doing. And I think the closer we move towards the Stockwell Lane area, I think that's dangerous. I don't want to do that. I think that
So
we
Dorian,
stay
I
closer
think
to the train area.
I think we can keep it broad enough on the letter of intent, and then the consultant, that if we get the grant, then we would have a consultant help us figure out where we want the 40R to be, and hopefully they'll know
Yes.
the
I think we're
pluses
getting
and
into the granular
minuses.
details again.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Okay.
this is a more high level discussion of, is this something that's of interest to Shopsy? Yes or no? And, I think we've identified 2 areas, and maybe we just need to prioritize A and B unless somebody has something else. And then we send a letter to the selectmen to say, like EDC did, to say, this is what's of interest to us. And then they have to take all from boards, committees, and departments and figure out what they actually want to include for the April 2nd deadline.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from this board is our first priority would be to try to create a zoning overlay district, a 40R district near
Feasibility of
Southville area.
I would say feasibility of
Feasibility.
because this grant is not to create one. Grant is to see the.
But it could be. It could be. So I
we don't want to
would
limit
word it
ourselves
as
in terms of
look
the
into
definition.
feasibility and creation.
Yeah, I agree with John on that.
Okay, so feasibility and creation of a zoning overlay,
Potential. creation.
40R zoning overlay for
40, okay.
So do we want to limit it to 40R? And
Not necessarily. Maybe just rezone, maybe broadly more rezoning the area around Southville to something
affordable.
that might be more facilitative of the development, the creation of housing.
okay.
Do we want
Like
to say
that.
instead of Southville, do we want to actually be a bit more specific around the train station? That's what we're talking about.
But we're probably, I defer to you guys. I think of the area that's is south of the train station more likely to be something would be developed, or north of that? I don't even know.
That's Hopkinton.
That's Hopkinton and
That's
Pond.
right. So it
Yes,
almost
let's
has to be.
develop Hopkinton. All right, so is this committee in agreement that would be a number 1 priority for us in that area?
Yes.
Okay, so second question, do you still want to try to be a stakeholder for the South Union School and kind of wait it out a little bit, but let them know that we do have an interest?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that we still have a serious interest in the South Union School for housing?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So would we include that in this grant, or would we just let the selectmen know?
I don't think I'd put that in.
That's
the grant.
something that would
I
have to
agree, John.
be developed, and money would be needed for developing that, correct?
Right.
That
That's
grant?
let's just make sure they know our interest. And
Yeah,
like, we don't know what the RFI is gonna come back with.
All right, so that'll be separate then. We won't include that in this grant. Okay. Does anybody have any other, and we're in agreement on the wastewater, the Route 9, where EDC and Capital are working on, correct?
If we can make sure that that whole, like I said, John was saying, Route 9, other committees have it so that we actually have our paragraph into that.
if you look on my presentation, Tom, I have including housing. I put all the stuff from the HPP
Okay,
on ours, just on our draft, just to have it.
so do we want to then send the selectmen a letter saying about our interest in Route 9, so that way they're,
Absolutely.
so it's the two interests. Our second priority would be Route 9 for the
Route
grant.
9 housing, okay. All right, so we probably need to take a vote. And Sarah, would you be able to draft a letter to the Board of Selectmen, notifying them of our intent?
Sure.
This is what we would like to be included in this One Stop for Growth grant
Sure.
application. Okay, so now we need a motion. Hey, Jesse, where are you? There you are. Jesse, can you come up with a motion to make sure the wording is correct? For
Okay.
feasibility and creation of a zoning overlay. I'm not that great with that verbiage.
That was half of it right there. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
So moved.
All right, well, this is what I wrote down. Make a motion to notify the selectmen that we would like, I don't know, how to include in this grant, the feasibility and creation of a zoning overlay district near the train station on Southville Road.
Mhm.
To throw in some housing in there, zoning to facilitate housing, just so that we tie it to housing. But that sounded pretty good to me.
Okay, Kay, can you do that? Throw in facilitate housing. All right, to facilitate, all right, hang on, I'm gonna write it.
Kate will synthesize our various comments into a cohesive,
Yeah, did you read that last
cohesive
one?
motion.
Yes.
All right, so our priority is the feasibility and creation of a zoning overlay district near the train station area off of Southville Road that helps to facilitate housing.
That was
Do I have a
good.
second? Quick.
You want to put
That's the motion.
diversified housing?
What?
Do we want to put it as diversified housing? That way it kind of covers 40B, 40R, 40 everything? Or just leave it as housing?
I think we can leave it broad.
Actually,
Yeah,
I would
we
leave
got
it
to
to facilitate
give us-
housing.
Okay,
And
Alright.
do you want 40R in there? Because I
I think
have.
I think we decided to keep it broad, Kate,
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
not limit it to 40R, even though that's probably our intention.
Got it.
Yeah, we kind of left that one out after many go-arounds.
You
All
got it.
right, would someone like to move that motion and then second, please?
I
Someone
think
needs-
we already so moved it.
Okay, and second, and Alex seconds it. Okay, this is a roll call vote. Tom B.
Yeah,
Agreed. Aye. Yes.
Okay, Chelsea,
Aye.
John,
aye.
Tom M,
I,
Jesse,
Aye.
Alex,
Aye.
and Dorian, I. Okay, so that is unanimous. So that's the main intent. That's number one. So then we have a second support for the development or the feasibility of what can be done on Route 9, including wastewater. I mean, I'm not
No,
really sure
no.
how to, I don't think that really has anything to do with us. So I
I
don't know if
think
we
the
just
Route 9
wanna,
feasibility to support affordable housing.
yes, leave it to that.
okay. Kate, did you get that John made that motion?
No, say that again. What do you
John.
want to say?
I just said, the second thing would be on our intent would be to do a feasibility study on Route 9 to support affordable housing.
Okay, I get you.
Does
I'll
that,
second that.
does that encompass enough, you think?
It
Yeah.
should. And Tom Marculier seconded it. Again, it's a roll call vote. Tom B,
Aye.
Chelsea,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Tom M,
Aye.
Jesse,
Aye.
Alex,
Aye.
and Dorian is aye. So that is also a unanimous vote. So those are two priorities for us. Number one being the Southville Road. Okay, does anybody have anything else they'd like to add to that discussion for today? All right, so Sarah, I'm sorry, but could you get together a letter
Yeah. Yep.
and get that off to the selectmen, hopefully by the end of the week, as
By
soon
the
as
end of the week.
possible, as soon
Yes.
as possible?
By the end of the week.
Do I need to
Sarah, I
sign
think
that?
Yeah, probably.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you need to get that to me probably by Thursday then, because I may be flying out Thursday night.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. All
Perfect.
right,
Sarah,
and
I'm gonna
and that's
send
okay? I'm sorry,
I'm-
John, what?
I'm gonna send Sarah our letter of intent so she can see how simple it
Oh,
was.
that would be
It's really a
helpful.
quick,
Can you
Okay.
cover both subjects in the same letter? Do they have to be separate letters?
Yes.
same letter.
Yeah.
Same
okay,
letter.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that should be,
Very simple. It didn't have too big of a narrative. It was just like, we'd like to put an interest in for this and this. And that's pretty much it. So I'll forward that off to you shortly, Sarah, and you can just fill in what you want on it.
Great, thanks.
If that helps.
okay. And then the last thing, Tom, do we have any updates from the master plan in the housing area?
Not to share, with the narrative chapter, Sarah gave it to me and now I'm working on it.
Yeah.
And so we're collaborating back and forth on it. I think a goal that we should have is before the meeting on the 26th, we'll share the draft that I've been working on
Absolutely,
so that you guys can all take a peek of it. It's,
sure.
I won't say it's rough. Sarah did a lot of good
It's,
stuff.
it's,
But
yeah. It needs some smoothing out of the edges. What Tom and I did, which was really helpful, is go through the HPP and determine what would be the most useful content to include in this section, and then kind of develop, redevelop really, that material integrated into the new narrative, for the housing section for the master plan. But it was,
yeah, so we're
It was
still
good.
working on it, collaborating back and forth.
All right, so Sarah, you'll send the entire committee that document. And then we
Working.
also, the application that we're sending in to the MAPC
yes.
after Karina, and it's not Karina Quinn, our
No.
Karina.
No,
it's
no,
the
no.
MAPC Karina that we're talking
Yes,
about,
yes,
just
ma'am.
so I clarify that for you guys. And once send that to us, do I need to sign that as well?
No, I
Okay.
believe, no, I believe that needs to be signed by Mark Purple, so like it just.
Or the selectmen, right? Or
Yes,
somebody, yeah,
the
as long as I don't
town
have to sign it
administrator.
because I'm leaving, so if I have to,
Right.
that's okay, perfect. And then the next meeting is Friday, March 26th. Everybody's good with that?
Yep.
Okay, and does anybody have anything else that they want to add or discuss on these topics and these topics only? On the agenda items, nothing. Okay, then will somebody make a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Okay. We need a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, roll call. Tom B,
Hey,
Chelsea,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Tom M,
Aye.
Jesse,
Aye.
Alex,
Aye.
Dorian. Aye, sorry. We are adjourned at 9:14. I'm waiting for someone to answer. That's okay.